From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on AgDay, towering ice castles, even an ice slide, all in the middle of a farm.
It is massively popular.
Why a new study says nearly 1 out of 5 loans in one government farm program are now delinquent. And we head back to Commodity Classic and the latest from the Ag Secretary.
I was one of those that assumed that the 232 tariffs would be resolved with the signing of the agreement.
AgDay, presented by the all-new Chevy Silverado, the strongest, most advanced Silverado ever.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. The Secretary of Agriculture is starting a new month in search of resolution to a whole host of ag-related issues. USDA Chief Sonny Perdue speaking to grain farmers at the 2019 Commodity Classic. National reporter Betsy Gibbon joins us from the newsroom with his comments. Betsy?
Clinton, Secretary Perdue addressed the Commodity Classic crowd on Friday, and as you can imagine, trade a major talking point. Perdue taking questions from the media about the trade agreement between the United States, Canada, and Mexico, called USMCA, asking when the U.S. will lift tariffs on its allies to the north and south.
I was one of those that assumed that the 232 tariffs would be resolved with the signing of the agreement.
President Trump vocal about favoring tariffs. Perdue saying it can be effective as a leverage mechanism, but telling the crowd it's time to lift them on Mexico and Canada.
I'm working to persuade him that the leverage is no longer needed unless it's needed for enforceability going forward. Particularly, I don't believe we need that for Canada and Mexico.
Perdue not giving a timeline during Q&A when tariffs may be lifted or if the agreement needs to be ratified before tariffs come off. Perdue also cleared up the mix-up earlier in the week whether E15 will be implemented by the driving season. He says, quote, right now it's on. Clinton?
All right, thanks, Betsy. Well, a new report says farmers are struggling to pay back loans. It says nearly 1 out of 5 loans in a government farm program are now delinquent. That's the worst January default rate in at least 9 years. The report was done by the Kansas City Star. It reports nationwide 19.4% of FSA direct loans were delinquent in January. That's compared to 16.5% for the same month a year ago. And while those FSA direct loan delinquencies are high, the agency is a lender of last resort for riskier agricultural borrowers who don't qualify for commercial loans. Its delinquency rates typically drop in subsequent months as more farmers pay off overdue notes and refinance debt. One economist at Kansas State University says the high delinquency rates are caused by back-to-back years of low prices. We're learning more about the ongoing U.S.-China trade talks. National Economic Council Director Larry Kudlow says progress has been terrific and said a deal was on the horizon. There are reports a 150-page document is being readied. There are also reports China has made offers to strengthen their laws in several areas identified by U.S. officials. We're also hearing under enforcement language pushed by the Trump administration, China would not be allowed to retaliate with tariffs. That's if the U.S. reapplied tariffs on China due to trade agreement violations. But our Washington insiders say there's been no confirmation China has accepted the U.S. written enforcement language. While negotiations between the U.S. and China work to find common ground on trade, that country is dealing with an altogether different agricultural disaster, African swine fever. Tyne Morgan takes a look.
As African swine fever races across China and Europe, the extent of the outbreak is still unknown. China's reported more than 100 cases of ASF so far. And while the number of pigs culled in China so far is not clear, American Farm Bureau says reported cases are hitting the heaviest pig-populated regions. As other countries battle the disease, producers at home are hopeful the industry can keep the disease off U.S. turf.
Right now, I'm extremely optimistic that we can keep it out.
Even as concerns flood in.
It's very concerning, and at this point, I think it's been beneficial to our industry here in the U.S. pork industry. But if it ever comes on shore, it'll be just the opposite. It'll be devastating for our industry here United States.
Right now we're watching all of our biosecurity protocols on our own farm, traffic in and traffic out, hoping that, if the disease ever gets into the country, maybe we can hopefully stop it.
Today, U.S. producers and industry officials are working to keep the disease out, including working with USDA.
So USDA is, we're talking to them about implementing a surveillance program within the diagnostic labs. We're presenting both USDA and FDA information about the feed ingredients and concerns over that.
Veterinarian Liz Wagstrom says leaders are also meeting with Customs and Border Protection to make sure barriers are in place.
Well, one of the things we're really focused on is those canine teams. So if you've been to an airport where they've got beagles meeting international flights, wanting to make sure that they're focusing on flights that are coming either from ASF positive areas or have passengers on the flights that have connected.
Wagstrom says what's different about the U.S. and China is biosecurity, but officials still don't know exactly how ASF is spreading so quickly.
I would say that I think they're very confident that swill feeding, garbage feeding, plate waste, whatever you want to call it, may be an important component. But it also seems very clear that it's moving through the movement of pigs as well.
Keeping ASF out of the U.S. is vital, as introduction here could be catastrophic.
It'd be a real problem for us initially, because right now we're shipping between 22 and 24% of our pork production out of the country.
Alan Brugler of Brugler Marketing says if any of those exports see restrictions, it could translate into weaker lean hog prices.
I think the initial reaction is bearish, maybe to the tune of $5 to $8, just because of the risk of losing that big of a market share in export.
With so much riding on the line, the pork industry is hopeful ASF will remain on foreign soil and demand will continue on its robust path.
So when we look at the economics, consumer demand for all meat protein in the United States is at all-time record highs. The average American consumer is going to be eating about 220 some pounds of delicious meat protein. About 52 pounds of that is expected to be pork.
But even if ASF is introduced here, Even says the pork you eat is still safe.
One thing that's real important for people to know is that it doesn't impact people, and pork is safe to eat. So that's one thing that we want everybody to really know. And the same token, it doesn't even impact your pets. So your pets are safe, your food is safe, and people are safe.
As producers hang on to hope ASF won't be a disease the U.S. ever has to deal with, prospects for 2019 look bright.
I think in 2019 we'll have a good year, if we don't have any major health concerns or challenges. I think that not only U.S. domestic consumption and also worldwide, that exports will be good, and I think we'll have a good year in 2019.
The arrival of March still bringing with it cold temperatures. Meteorologist Cindy Clausen has more in today's Crop Comments. Cindy.
Well, Clinton, it may still be cold, but those clear night skies are creating some pretty spectacular views. Take a look at this photo shared with us by Isaac. He lives in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in the town of Hancock. And in just this one picture, you can see not only the northern lights and lots of stars, but at least one bright light pillar in the middle. If you look closely, you can see at least a couple others off to the right side of those light pillars that are kind of going straight up into the sky. Beautiful picture, Isaac. Thanks so much for sending that in. Stay tuned. We're going to have your national forecast coming up. But for now, here are some hometown temps.
Introducing Farm Journal TV, on demand 24/7. AgDay, Machinery Pete TV. U.S. Farm Report on your phone and tablet. Download the Farm Journal TV mobile app today.
2018 is the 5th year in a row the nation's beef cattle herd has seen expansion. That's according to the newly released cattle inventory numbers from USDA. But analysts say there are signs that growth may be slowing. The government shutdown delayed tally found that as of January 1st, there were 94.8 million head of cattle in the U.S., up about a half percentage point from a year earlier. The report shows a 1% increase in beef cow numbers, while beef replacement heifers were down 3%.
In reality, we're producing more beef, but we're shipping more overseas, so the net is per capita supplies doesn't change a lot. With that, we think beef prices, live cattle prices can be close to steady. Unfortunately, because we've got bigger calf crop and bigger feeder cattle and calf supplies, feed yards are pretty full, we'll probably see some downward pressure on both feeder cattle and calves as the year progresses.
Now, by region, take a look at this graphic from our partners over at Drovers. The central states from Texas through the Great Lakes seeing increased herd numbers based on cheaper feeds. The Southeast came in neutral, fighting hurricane issues, and out west, cattle numbers were down due to drought and dryness. Martha Stewart and hemp, the two will soon be teaming up. The domestic diva is partnering with Canopy Growth Corporation. Her plan is to assist in developing new products that contain non-psychoactive CBD and other hemp-derived cannabinoids. First to come will be offerings for pets, but Stewart didn't say what those products might be. Ontario, Canada-based Canopy Growth sells marijuana, oils, and other products for medical and recreational users. Administration officials are talking positively about trade negotiations with China, but it's not a done deal. Coming up, we'll look at what happens if a trade agreement is or isn't approved. And it looks like a scene out of the movie Frozen, but it's real life. See what has people flocking to an acre of farmland in New Hampshire in the country. Negotiations are one thing, but getting a signed agreement is another. What do markets look like regardless of the outcome? Tyne Morgan asked that question from Commodity Classic in Orlando.
Here now with Mark Gold of Top Third. Mark, when we look at this trade war, we're past that March 1st deadline. A lot of farmers wanted a resolution by March 1st, right? Still don't have that. But as we work through this, a lot riding on the line. So let's talk about what if we win this trade war and what if we don't?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that this is one of these years where it's going to be boom or bust. If we have a trade deal, these markets can really move significantly higher. $30 billion of agricultural products is a big deal. Another 10 million metric tons of soybeans is a big deal. If we don't have the trade deal, then it's a negative and these prices can move significantly lower. So what does the American farmer do with that? It's going to be a boom or bust. It's going to be feast or famine. As we talked about on the show, you've got to be willing to protect a good rally. And what's a good rally? You know, is it 420, 430 corn? Is it $9.60, $10 beans? It probably is. But because it could be a great year, if you're going to get those opportunities and sell early, you need to replace it with a call option.
Would you do you suggest looking past 2019?
Not right now. Let's take one step at a time. Because if we do have a trade deal, these markets can get excessively bullish in 2020. And I think, you know, farmers have had 3 or 4 really tough years, and I think the propensity will be to sell early.
Right.
And we advocate selling early, but we think that if the farmers get too far ahead of themselves, that's when these markets can really take off.
So you think this could be a year where farmers sell too much too early?
I believe it's certainly possible if we get the trade deal. Forget about weather. I mean, certainly weather is going to be an important part if we have a drought or if we have good weather. But the bottom line is the deal is what's going to make or break the American farmer this year.
Mark Gold, thank you so much for
Thanks,
joining
Diane.
us. We appreciate it. Let's take a quick break and then we'll have a check of weather right here on Ag Day.
For a special report on the grain markets, call toll-free at 877-TT-HEDGE. That's 877-884-3343. Ag Day, brought to you by new Delaro fungicide for corn and soybeans. Achieve personal best yields.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Her meteorologist Cindy Clausen. Cindy, looking at the drought monitor here, and some of these places that are still dry are still getting rain.
Yeah, and we've really seen a lot of improvement. And so even though it still looks bad, this is a lot better than it was just a couple of months ago. Let's take a look. It wasn't all that long ago that a lot of the western United States was seeing just covered with drought, and in some cases a lot of extreme and even exceptional drought. Watch what's happened over the last 4 weeks. We've had a lot of rain in the west, and that's really improved the drought situation. Now the bad news is that we've had a lot of rain, and that has caused a lot of problems with flooding and landslides and things like that. You don't want it all at once like we have seen, but if there is anything positive to that is that we are seeing some of that drought getting knocked away. One of the real areas that we're still watching, though, that hasn't changed quite so much is right here in the Four Corners region. All right, let's take a look at the rainfall. This is over the last week, and we've seen a lot in the southeastern United States, and that's one of the focus where a lot of areas had over 3 inches of rain. The other area, though, though, in California, especially in the northern part of the state over the last week, where you can see some areas had over 8 inches of rain or the liquid equivalent in those higher elevations. So a lot of moisture there in especially northern California. Here's a look at the jet stream, and as we head through the week, we're going to see a cold start as we have a trough dipping down into the Great Lakes. That will eventually deepen and then start to move away later on in the week. We'll see some warmer temperatures coming up into the western parts of the United States, and we'll see a warm up by the end of the week for the eastern parts of the country as well. But another trough dips down as we get into late next weekend and early next week around the Great Lakes. As we look a little bit further into the future, here's a look at our temperatures this week. So overall, we're looking at below normal temperatures for a good chunk of the country. The warmest spots will be right here in the southwestern United States. As far as precipitation is concerned, a little on the dry side, Florida, also parts of Texas and into Arizona, New Mexico. Still wet though in a lot of California, into the Intermountain West and even into the central Corn Belt. A little dry in the northern Great Lakes as well. Now, as we look even farther into the future, for the month of March, it's going to be on the cold side for a lot of the nation's midsection on into the west. Maybe a bit warm in New England, also down in Florida. And as far as precipitation is concerned, we are looking at, for 90 days, we're looking at above normal precipitation down in the southeast, and we're looking at maybe some drier conditions in the upper Midwest and into the Great Lakes. That's your national forecast. Now let's check on the weather where you live. Deary, Idaho, mostly sunny with a high of 26 degrees today. Hays, Kansas, mostly sunny for you as well, but very cold with a high of 16. And Van Wert, Ohio, partly to mostly sunny and very cold for you as well with a high of 19 degrees.
As temperatures start to warm, field work will begin. Are you geared up for driving season? Well, Machinery Pete joins us next to talk two-wheel drive tractor prices. And later, a real-life frozen ice castle, how this New Hampshire farm becomes a fantasy in the country.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
Lots of new farm equipment at this year's Commodity Classic, but Machinery Pete also has an eye on used, specifically two-wheel drive tractors.
Hey, reporting on the road this week, folks, from Orlando, Florida, down here for the Commodity Classic. Got to say, it's nice to get away from the snowy cold of southeast Minnesota for a couple days. And of course, fun to look at all the new machinery at the show. But I tell you what, one of the trends we're seeing on the used market, nice condition, older two-wheel drive model tractors, really hot. Now here's a picture of a 2002 Case IH MX200 two-wheel drive. This sold on a farm auction last Thursday in central Illinois. Had 1,700 hours on it and sold for $57,500. Highest auction price on a two-wheel drive MX200 in 5 years. Now, a week ago Saturday, down in southeast Virginia, this very sharp 1993 John Deere 7600 two-wheel drive, 1,360 hours on it, went for $52,000. An exact same story here, folks. Highest auction price in 5 years. Now the day before that, a week ago Friday, hop over to south central Nebraska, and this 1983 John Deere 4450 with 2,267 hours on it went for $46,000. Now that's the 9th highest auction price ever on a two-wheel drive 4450, but also the highest in the last 4 years. And I'll leave you with one more. A week ago Tuesday, online auction in southeast South Dakota. This 1981 International 3488 two-wheel drive with just over, I think it was just over 5,800 hours on it, sold for $27,050. Same story, highest auction price two-wheel drive, 5 years.
All right, thanks Greg. From hot machinery markets to ice-cold castles. Next, we're off to New Hampshire for a tour that would make even Elsa jealous.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com.
All that snow and ice has to go somewhere on the farm, so why not turn it into a winter wonderland? Check out what's been created on an acre of farmland in North Woodstock, New Hampshire. It's called Ice Castles, and you can see why. The attraction starts small in December. That's when builders set up icicle farms. They take metal racks that are sprayed with water and allow the icicles to grow on them. The icicles are then harvested by ice artists, who then place them around more than 70 sprinklers.
the water eventually freezes and starts making them grow together. They get bigger and bigger and thicker and thicker. Once they're thick enough, we place another layer of icicles on top of that and another layer on top of that, and basically grow the castle about 2 to 3 feet at a time.
When done, the creation features a collection of ice tunnels, caverns. There's even a 90-foot ice slide and some colored lights. It's all a magical scene at night. It's also a huge hit. Tickets sell out every Friday and Saturday nights. It's even become a popular site for marriage proposals. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Started your week with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.